House needs painting, grass needs mowing, where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.
Hello, everybody. Hank Parker here. Got my granddaughter, my beautiful co-host, Sarah Beth, and we're off the water. Today, I have got the greatest tournament fisherman in the history of the world, a hero of mine. I'm so excited. Kevin Vandam. Hello, Kevin.
Man, it's good to be on. You say that you're my hero, man. I mean, I grew up watching the shows. I mean, I think back now, one of my favorite things growing up as a kid was that, Sunday TNN block of television shows, it's Hank Parker and Roland Martin and Bassmasters and In Fisherman. And I mean, Orlando Wilson. How about that? I'll throw that one back out there to you as well, too. But I mean, I grew up watching Virgil Ward, but those were the glory days there. And man, something I look forward to. So it's an honor to be on the show.
You started as a little kid. You got hooked on fishing. You're talking about watching Virgil Ward. You couldn't, you're still in elementary school.
Yeah, I was. I would ride my bike to, ponds or knock on doors to get people to let me fish. And Virgil is the guy that got me into spinnerbait. So my very first spinnerbait was the Bass Buster Beetle Spin. And I mean, I wore the fish out on that thing. So that's what got me, that's what started my love for spinnerbaits. Of course, obviously, you're a pretty big spinnerbait guy, and, yourself and Jimmy Houston really fueled that. So, I mean, when I came out in fishing tournaments, spinnerbaits were, probably my top tool, in my early part of my career. And a lot of that is because of that early foundation with Virgil Ward. And then obviously, following it up the ladder to the pros.
That is amazing. How old were you when you got hooked on fishing?
Man, my dad took me ice fishing when I was 3 years old, and I still actually can recollect that, which I really didn't fish. All I did is walk around in the ice and look at all the guys that were fishing out there. And it was bluegill fishing, but, I just kicking snow in the holes and doing what kids do, just basically the same thing. When you bring a little kid to a stream, he's going to pick up rocks and chase frogs and do all that. That's what I did on the ice. And I just was always enamored with it from a young age. I caught my first bass when I was 6, and that was pretty incredible for me. But I caught my first smallmouth. My dad took me up to Traverse City on their company fishing outing they did every Memorial weekend when I was 7 years old. He made me wait till I was 7 because he wanted to make sure I could old enough and mature enough to stay in the boat all day, right? And I caught my first smallmouth and that's the one that changed my life for sure. It was just a 10-incher, but the way he fought and pulled and jumped and all that, I mean, I've just had that passion for smallmouth since that day.
That is amazing. I want to go back and recall the very first time I ever heard the name Kevin Vandam and met you for the very first time was, I think, maybe 1987. You fished your first national tournament on the Thousand Islands. We were in Clayton, New York, I believe. And you fished your first national tournament. And I know you drew, and we won't call a name, but I know you drew a big name pro. And he didn't let you do your thing. He took you to another area. And you guys didn't catch him that day. But had you not drawn him and you caught the same number of fish the day you had him as a partner, that you caught the other 2 days when you went to your fish, you would have won your very first national tournament ever. That would have been unbelievable. Well,
you can say a lot of what ifs, but it was a learning experience for sure. That first day, I grew up fishing smallmouth in Michigan, but I had this first time I'd been to Thousand Islands, and we didn't have the weather apps and stuff. But that first day we were going to make a big run to, Henderson Bay and beyond. And we were in a, 17, 10 and Ranger with a 150. And it was like one of the roughest days. It didn't start that way, but boy, we didn't get past the mouth of the river very far, and they got to rolling. And I'd never seen waves like that. And I grew up in Michigan, so it was a day. We tore up everything on the boat, broke the trolling motor, the depth finders, all of it, and I felt lucky to make it back at the end of the day. I'd never taken so many waves in the face as that day, but yeah. The what ifs are there, but I learned a really good lesson in that, don't get intimidated by your partner. I'm fishing the Bassmasters, and there's Hank Parker and Rick Clunn and Jimmy Houston and Roland Martin. And the guys that I grew up idolizing and watching and reading about, and it's hard to not get intimidated, but that taught me a really, really good lesson, and it served me well in the future.
Well, now, when you fished that Bassmaster tournament, you didn't come back for a couple of years. When you fished the first one in 87, when did you fish your second one?
I fished another one the next spring. So my plan in the beginning was I love tournaments. I was doing really well around home. I won the Angler of the Year in my club, a couple of years straight, and was fishing the Federation tournaments here, and I won the Federation Angler of the Year. And I wanted to go out and compete and just see just how good, Ricky was, and yourself and Jimmy and Roland and Guido and Denny Brower and Tommy Martin. All these guys that I watched. And, after, fishing a few tournaments, and because I basically, I was in school and working and doing whatever. So I fished a couple of events for the next few years. And it was the 1990-91 season where I went full time and fished all the invitationals. Back then you had to fish the 6 invitationals and the BP top 100s, had just started a couple of years prior to that. And you had to fish all 6 invitationals just to qualify for that. And then Angler of the Year was determined by all 10 of them, the four Pro-Ams and then the 6 invitationals together. So I fished all 6 that first year. And, I didn't win one. I finished second to Guido at the St. Johns River. I finished third in the very first one back at the St. Lawrence there. And I won the points in Rookie of the Year. I was first in the points, and I qualified for the Classic and qualified for the BP top 100s. And the next year, 92, I fished all of them, and I won Angler of the Year my very first year out there. So, I was different. Obviously, most of the guys on tour were from the South. And I remember, Bo Dowden Sr. made some snide comments, about me, who's this rookie kid? And it's no different today. When you see the new kids coming in, I think the veterans look a little differently at them and that, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's fun to kind of reminisce about these days.
You look back in those tournaments, and you had to be diplomatic because you had to draw a partner, and so you were competing against, and of course I did that my whole career. I drew Clunn, I drew Larry Nixon multiple times, and had all these different partners, and you had to be diplomatic. And then you start going with co-anglers a few years later. Tell me the difference and how it fit your style. Were you able to excel more or less once you got in the position that you had co-anglers versus a partner?
Yeah, in those early invitationals, like you say, it was pro paired with pro, and you were competing against each other, standing side by side on the front deck, and you had to share your time on the trolling motor in your areas and things. But I always loved drawing, good anglers. You mentioned Larry Nixon. Larry's one of my heroes, a great friend, and I drew Larry. And guys like Larry or yourself, you're smart. Hey, this guy knows what he's doing. He's going to be on fish. You put together a good game plan. Try to, say, hey, if you got a better early bite or late bite, follow the weather. And I had a lot of good days fishing with top level pros, but I definitely liked it when we went to the Pro-Am format and you had an amateur. The tough thing there is if you got a really good amateur, you had to be careful to if they weren't thrown over your line and stuff like that to get on your fish. Where if I got Hank Parker standing beside me and I pull up on a spot and throw out there and catch one on a crankbait, I know you're going to make the cast right there too. We're splitting the fish. Where in a pro-am, you can kind of guard it a little bit, be a little bit more. And then eventually, we ended up just having observers, and then you could totally manage your fish and your spots, to your best. And it just allows you as an angler to totally have 100% control and really be in your own element. And that's really the purest form. If you got lucky and drew somebody that was on the right fish, it could change your whole tournament. Where if you're the one making all the decisions and you're picking all your spots and all that, there's no hiding, for a bad day. You can't have a bad day on the Bassmaster Elite Series. You can't have a bad day and expect to win Angler of the Year anymore. And so it's just progressed. It's really interesting to see how the sport has grown and changed. And, it is professional level, right? It shouldn't be easy. It should be really hard. And that's how it transpired and how it changed over the years for sure.
Well, it's amazing to me that regardless of what the format was, whether it was a draw and an angler fishing against another angler and you had them toe-to-toe, side-by-side, or whether you had an observer in the back of the boat, whatever the conditions were, whatever the circumstances were, you prospered. You never missed a lick. I mean, when you went from a 5 bass limit to moving over to major league fishing and fishing for unlimited numbers, it didn't matter. You always prevailed regardless of your situation. You can't say that hardly. I can't even think of another angler that fit that mold, that regardless of what the circumstances were, Kevin Vandam was always at the top, at the pinnacle, regardless of the circumstances and the rules and how you were fishing. And that, to me, is amazing. And what you accomplished is greater than anybody. If you just go by your record and look at that very first tournament that you fished on the St. Lawrence in '87, and you followed your career year by year, no one has ever been able to accomplish what you accomplished. And it really didn't matter what the rules were, what the situation were. Vandam was always at the top of the heap. Did that ever dawn on you when you showed up that, hey, I'm the greatest fisherman in the world? Or did you have your challenges where you thought, man, I got to get with it, I'm going to get whipped?
Yeah, no, you're only as good as your last tournament. And, you got to put the past in the past, whether you won your last one or you finished, at the bottom of the pack. But it's your job as a tournament angler to change your style and your game plan to fit whatever format. And, you've lived it too, from the Mega Bucks tournaments where we had the whole course format to, like you say, for pounds and ounces, for, Angler of the Year, for point system, Major League Fishing where every fish counts, to the 5 fish limit, to, I've lived it all over the years. And for 33 years that I competed, at the tour level, I always really tried hard to be able to put my position, self in position to be in contention, not only just to win. It took me a little while early in my career to figure out how to win. I knew to do well, right? It's like making cuts. And I think I started out making 23 straight checks in a row. And that was like, I think it might still be the record, I don't know. But I got so focused on that, making sure that you'd make the, that top 50 cut in those invitationals, or, the top cut in the pro-ams, to not necessarily 100% always focus on winning. And, Denny Brower is one of those guys that I thought he was one of the, the ultimate closers, over his career. And he's a great friend of mine. And he taught me a lot about the mentality of what it takes to win. And once I've won a few, then it changes everything. Your mindset changes and you take bigger risks and chances and you game plan a little bit better. And The hardest thing, I think, for the average tournament angler, the weekend tournament angler, club angler, to make that step or that jump to the professional level is understanding how to manage a 3 or 4 day event, as opposed to a 1 day tournament or a 2 day tournament, following the weather and making sure you have enough fish for all those days. And my style early on, being a power fisherman, covering water, fishing fast, really being a lot faster than most people when it comes to breaking down water and things like that. It gave me more options as the week progressed, and it helped my overall consistency because I always had something to back up to if pressure got to an area, or if the weather changed, or we got a flood, or something crazy happened condition wise. So you had something for the third and the fourth day of those events, and you just didn't fall off the map. So, that's a big part of it. And that's, today, even still, you have to adapt. Obviously, one of the biggest things and the biggest hot buttons right now is technology and forward-facing sonar and how it's changed the sport and things like that. And, I think you're going to see a lot of changes from the leagues going forward around that as well. But you have, as an angler, it's your job to adapt to the format, the rules, the conditions, the time of the year, the body of water. It'd be great if we had, 7 smallmouth tournaments for me, but it's really good when you go to the James River where it's a tidal fishery, and you go to New York, and then you go to Okeechobee in Texas. And that's the true test of the real angler of the year is being able to compete in a lot of different locations and times of the year and seasonal patterns. And I think that, the old school BASS format where we started in the fall and fished through the whole year till the following summer was arguably the best test because you fished all 4 seasons. We fished a lot of different patterns, and it was challenging because the classic was always in the summer. And, it may not set up for everybody's strengths then, and then when the classic changed to the spring, you have to adapt to that as well. But that's what I've always worked hard at. I don't know that I've always done the best job at everything, but consistently over my career, I've had a pretty dang good record.
Oh, it's unbelievable. But, most of the guys from the northern part of the country, when you went to Florida, where there's no contour, I mean, you grow up and you're fishing the Great Lakes and you're fishing a lot of lakes in Michigan and the area where you lived, and you got a lot of depth and you got a lot of contour points and breaks and all that sort of stuff. All of a sudden you go to Florida and you got nothing but flats. Everything is grass and flats, and it's extremely difficult for most people to come from Canada or Michigan or the extreme northern part of the country and now be able to compete in Florida. That's a whole different world. And most guys struggle with that. And your first trip to Florida, you end up, almost win the dang tournament. That's amazing to me how you adapted to that.
Yeah. The great thing about where I live in Michigan is we have a ton of diversity. There's a lot of different types of lakes and stuff. And, early in my career, everywhere that I went, I could find some place that I could kind of recall from Michigan that was similar. When we went to Lake Guntersville with all that milfoil in the late 80s and the early 90s, all of our lakes had milfoil in it. So it was like, hey, it was just like fishing at home. I didn't understand current or power generation or things. That all took time. And, today, young anglers, they have a lot more resources. We didn't have YouTube and the internet and, all this information out there. At that time, basically, you had the Bassmaster television show, a few other TV shows, and the Bassmaster magazine to learn from. And, I soaked up every issue and really worked real hard at it. And it's no different than anybody else in sports. If you want to be really good at something, you have to put the time in, and there's no substitute for that. When I was in high school, there was a lot of 3-sport athletes. You look at now, these kids, they're all, if you're going to focus on football, you're going to focus on football. If it's tennis or lacrosse or hockey, or they're playing travel ball. And that's what these young college and high school anglers are doing now. is they're putting everything into it, and they're making those trips to go to different fisheries, to fish different areas, different times of the year, because that's what you have to do at the tour level. And it's just progressed. That's just how the sport's grown, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. The one thing that you talked about earlier, that you fish faster, you were a power fisherman, you covered a lot of water. I drew Tommy Martin in one of the first years that I fished in 1976, and he had won the Classic in 1974. And he and Ricky Green teamed up together, and they shared information, and we fished a tournament down on Clarks Hill in South Carolina. And I had never fished with a power fisherman. I had fished, and for my club and where I came from, I was the fastest guy. You know, I threw a spinnerbait and I covered a lot of water. But when I fished with Tommy Martin, it was like his hair was on fire, and he didn't waste any time. And he met up with Ricky Green on the water, and Ricky fished one side of the cove, and Tommy fished the other, and then we met in the back of that cove, and I had Tommy as a partner, and it blew my mind. I was just really impressed with how efficient, and Tommy he was ambidextrous. He could throw it with his left or his right, and man, he's throwing that thing, and he's going at it like he's on fire. And it influenced me, and so I really wanted to pick up my game and fish faster. And I thought I need to be more efficient, and I want to take every second of every day and not waste 1 second. And so I tried to adapt to fish more Tommy's style and Ricky's. And then Irwin Jacobs hired me to kind of critique the FLW guys, and I fished with you. And I sat in the back of the boat and I watched you, and you fish faster than anybody I've ever seen in my life. And I thought, man, this kid, if he ever slows down, he'll win every tournament in the world. He fishes too fast. He's overlooking a lot of stuff. And then 2 years later, I fished with you again, and I realized, and I go back to fishing with Tommy, I tried to adapt and fish like him. That wasn't my style. I wasn't able to fish at that pace and process it mentally, so I had to find my own gait. I had to find my own speed. I had to fish the way I could mentally process it. So when I fished with you the first time in the FLW deal with in the back of the boat, where I'm only observing, I'm trying to critique the anglers, and I fished with you, I thought, man, this kid fishes too fast. If he would slow down, he's going to really dominate completely. He'll win every tournament. And then when I fished with you the second time, I realized you're able to fish at that speed and process it mentally, because I watched you put together patterns and you didn't miss a lick. You knew everything that was going on. I can't do that. I can't fish as fast as you and process it mentally. So I think all these years that I felt at first you were fishing too fast, you're an unusual person and you have incredible talents. You're like a Tom Brady. I mean, he could process that football field and read the defense, and he better than any quarterback at the time in the era that he played in the NFL. He was an amazing individual. That's exactly who you were. You were a guy that was uniquely different than any angler out there at the way you power fished and the way you process that mentally. So these kids that look today and say, man, I want to fish like Kevin Vandam, I would like to say, I cannot fish like Kevin Vandam. I'm not smart enough. I cannot process mentally at the speed that you fish. And to me, that's amazing. And it impresses me, but at the same time, I got to fall back and say, no, I can't do that. So I think every kid has got to kind of find their own gait and figure out how they can fish. But you still fish like that today, 90 miles an hour. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've always tried to be super. You say the word efficient, and that's what it is. You know, you got an 8-hour day out there, and it's about maximizing your day, making the most number of premium presentations you can in a day's time. That's how you're going to prevail in a lot of situations. And you got to learn. You got to break it down. And in covering water is a big part of that. If you're in the wrong area and you can't catch them where they're not, right? So big part of that speed is getting yourself in the right area. But I have learned over the years that there's times you got to go slow. And it's one of the things that's always fascinated me is watching other successful anglers. I've got to fish with Tommy Martin and Larry Nixon and Denny Brower and, those guys. But you watching some of these younger anglers coming up today, it's the same thing. It blows my mind. Like Aaron Martin's a great friend of mine. I miss him every day. The way that he thought about things, and it's just totally opposite for me. And I think I blew his mind and he blew mine, but it's really interesting to see how other people do it, and the most important thing is don't try to be Kevin Vandam or Hank Parker or Aaron Martins. You got to learn from everybody that you can. And that's what I try to do. And just apply it to your style and your own game plan. And that's how you do it. I mean, I'm not going to throw a frog like Dean Rojas is going to throw a frog, but I can learn a lot from Dean. Or, I can't flip like Denny Brower, but I can learn a lot how I can add it to my game plan, and I'm not going to crank like David Fritz, but I learned a lot from David Fritz about deep cranking, but I just adjusted it to my style. And, it's just like a recipe, you can copy somebody else's recipe, change it a little bit, and then you can call it your own.
Well, I think that's what it takes too. You put that recipe together and you figure it all out, and you get it where it fits the way you like to fish, and you put it all together, and it's a puzzle, and you get it all worked out. And obviously, you did that better than anybody. Your record shows that and reflects that. We talked a little bit about the changing of the sport, and everybody says, well, the reason Van Dam got out is forward-facing sonar, and it's changing the world, and he didn't want to deal with that. And I said, no. Kevin has accomplished everything that there was to accomplish. There's nothing left for him to win. He's got kids. He loves to hunt. He loves to do things on his own. And when you fish tournaments, you're dictated by a schedule that you don't control. And the one thing that I don't think people understand, we are living the dream. I've heard that a million times. Man, Hank, you're living the dream. You're living the dream. Nobody knows how hard it is behind the scene to keep all these balls juggled in the air with all the business commitments that you have and keeping your mind free to compete. So tell us exactly why you retired.
You pretty much hit it right on the head. I love tournaments. I love competing. One of the greatest parts about it is you're forced to go to fisheries that you probably wouldn't go to any other way, and figure it out and break it down. And I love that aspect of it. But the schedule is a grind, and it is a lot. All the commitments and all the things on top of that. And I did it for 33 years, but I just felt at this point in my life and, career that I could be more impactful. And I really think about the next generation. I think about conservation. I think about the future of fishing, opportunities out there. And I've got a great platform that I think I can be a voice to really help the next generation, the future of fishing, of conservation, protecting the resources that we have. And I want to have fun doing what I'm doing. And right up to the end, I was having a lot of fun. I knew it would be a challenge, that when those first tournaments came out, that I'd miss it. And there's no doubt that you do. But, I've started a television show, and that's kind of filled that void of competition for me, because when you have your own production company, your own people, you're the one that's on the hook for all of the costs and your employees and timing and sponsors. that meter's running when you leave the house to shoot a show. And it's very much that same adrenaline rush that I get from fishing tournaments, going there and figuring out, because I don't fish like other people, and I'm not filming shows like other people. And, we're doing it, on public water, and I'm traveling around the country and doing it. So, it's been a great transition this first year. My new show debuts on the Outdoor Channel at the beginning of January of 2025. And I think people will really enjoy it. It's going to be a good mix of everything grown to know and love about me and my fishing style, and got some really great guests. And we had a lot of fun, and definitely I can't giggle like Jimmy Houston. And, I'm not entertaining like Mark Zona is per se, but I think I can help people have a better day on the water. And at the end of it, I think people really enjoy that show. But on top of that, you still do all the other stuff for YouTube and, all the sponsor content and social media and all that. It's really hard and it's time consuming, and there's a lot more that goes into it. So the only thing that's changed, I'm working as hard as I ever have as a tournament angler. The only thing that has changed is my schedule, the flexibility in my schedule. And, my wife has earned that she's my number one partner, and, she's my business manager, and she's the reason behind the scenes that I am been as successful that I have been. And we built a great brand, and, we've got a lot of things going on, but, we've had our 30th anniversary a couple of years ago, and we've still not been able to find time to take a bucket list trip for ourselves, because we're so busy working for your sponsors and other people and these commitments and things like that. So this will allow us, instead of being married to that tour schedule, to have some flexibility, in planning shows out. This year's been kind of a transition year with still fishing, finalizing my tournament career, fishing the heavy hitters and the Red Crest events, and, these last few events, and then starting this TV show. But, next year things should free up a little bit more and allow us to do some of the things that we've always wanted to do from a travel standpoint. And people ask what I do when I'm not fishing or not filming. That's what we do. We live on the water. We love to spend time on the lake. I love to fish. I love to hunt. And that's going to give us that opportunity to do a lot of those things that we've always had to put on the back burner.
And that's exactly the reason I thought you retired. So for the record, to be absolutely clear for the whole world to know, had nothing to do with forward-facing sonar.
No, not a doubt. I've been using forward-facing sonar. Humminbird and Minn Kota are my main partners, and I've been using it since they've had it. I was on the forefront of 360, and then Mega 360, which was the first really forward-looking sonar of any kind, and still a great tool. And I've been a benefactor of technology. I've won a lot of money just because of Lake Master Mapping and side imaging and Mega 360, and now we've got Mega Live, and forward-facing sonar is dominating the headlines, and it is it's an unbelievable tool. It's a lot of fun to use, but so are a lot of other things. So I think that the leagues, and as a professional sport, will find a happy medium with technology and fishing going forward. I sure hope so, because I don't like the controversy or the drama or the division among our anglers. And it's not a young and old thing. There's plenty of guys. You know it as well as I do. It's fascinating to me to see what I see with Mega Live. It's all the things that I've learned and thought, and that are truths on how bass relate to structure and cover and seasonal patterns and things like that. It throws a whole lot of all of that right out the window, because there's a whole population of fish that never comes to the bank, that never does anything but swim around out there in the open water. And we've never, it's opened up a world we've never seen before. So that is really good in that sense. But, at some point, just like in hunting, you've got to decide what's sporting and what's not. We don't use electronic calls to hunt greenheads. what we do for snow geese, or you can use a thermal to hunt hogs or coyotes at night, but we're not using the thermal to find elk out west. I mean, it comes to a point, or cell cameras in deer hunting. That's another big controversy. So eventually, I think as a sport, we'll get that all figured out. But I've always embraced technology. You better not think any other way, because everybody's got one of these. If you didn't have this smartphone, how would we live every single day? And technology is a great thing, and I look forward to seeing how it shakes out in the future. And it's fun. So I want to be on the forefront of that. And now in my new role, because I really didn't retire, I just changed jobs from a tournament angler to a full-time, television host, whatever you want to call it, brand ambassador. I don't like the word influencer, because I know I influence people, and I like to help people out, but I'm not one of these people that's just out there trying to get clicks on a channel, doing stupid stuff or crazy stuff, or treating the resource. It drives me crazy to have somebody out there jerking a bass up out of the bank and letting it flop around in the grass on the shore after, I'm a professional, and I want to do things in what I think are the correct way, with conservation in mind, and thinking about the future, and being respectful in the way that you do it. So that's what I want to be going forward, is a true brand ambassador and a professional, and an advocate for the sport of fishing and tournament bass fishing. I mean, that's me to my core. I love it. I watch it. I follow it. I'll always be that guy. And I look forward to having a lot of fun going forward.
Well, you've been a great ambassador, and that's a lot of responsibility. And I tell all these professional guys, that friends of mine and friends of yours, that whether we like it or whether we don't like it, we're in a position that we've got to be a good role model. We've got to preserve the sport. We've got to preserve the integrity of the sport. And I never wanted to get off on forward-facing sonar. I don't like controversy. The reason I started my podcast, I wanted people to know who Ray Scott is. I want them to know who Blake Honeycutt is. I want them to know Bobby Murray, and to know the history of the sport and the good things and the good times and all the fun stuff that we've all enjoyed and been a part of. So I tried to avoid forward-facing sonar topic, because I know it is such a division and it's so controversial. But I couldn't run from it. Everybody said, well, you're afraid to approach it. So Sarah Beth can tell you a lot about all the negatives that we got. But I love what you just said about thermals for hunting deer or elk out west. There's got to be some regulation as this thing goes forward, because and I know we're both very much involved with Humminbird, and man, that's a nonstop, every day. Mark Gibson, who is an incredible engineer, great friend of mine, Mark works every day at improving, making things better. And this thing is in an infant stage. It is no telling where it's going to be 10 years from now. So I don't want these kids, we work to help high school kids raise money to keep their sport funded and keep it alive. And I want these high school kids to grow in the sport, and I want them to be like you are. I want them to be versatile. I want them to be able to catch fish in hydrilla or milfoil or on a frog, or like Denny does flipping a jig, or like Fritz does with a crankbait. I want them to know all the techniques and methods. I don't want them to just be stuck on forward-facing sonar. So with that being said, there's got to be some sort of regulation, but it's completely unfair and unwise to think that you're going to stop technology, because it's going to continue just like that cell phone. It's going to be a big part of who we are and what we do. But at some place, there has to be a line drawn in the sand, and there has to be some ruling that makes this thing fair, where these kids learn the fundamentals of fishing, whether it's throwing a frog or flipping a jig or cranking or whatever it is, not just throwing a minnow in front of a sonar. So I have concerns, And then I listened to the other side of the story, and the guy said, "Well, that's wrong. That you're saying regulated or banned it or get." I've never said banned it, but I have said regulate. Find a happy medium that makes it legal. Great thermal imaging to go find an animal that you shot, but not to find an animal to shoot.
Right.
So that rule is important. And so I like where you're at. And I'm going to tell you, Kevin, you're going to be the voice that's probably going to be the single most influential person on this stand, because you have dominated in this sport. You have accomplished more than anybody else. Now you're on the outside of tournaments, but your heart's still there and you care about the sport, and you have been a great ambassador, and I commend you for that. But a lot of this is going to fall on your shoulders. Where's Van Dam stand on forward-facing sonar? Where is the limit? Where is the rules? How far is it going to go? Are we going to regulate it? Do we need to regulate it or just let it go? And I don't know the answer, and I've said long before, somebody smarter than me is going to have to figure out the way this thing's going to go down. But we can't not ignore it, in my opinion. Somebody's going to have to step up to the plate, put a group of guys together and say, what is best for our sport? And that has been my stand all along. Not that I'm against technology. What is the best ruling we can do for our sport? And I think banning it is wrong. I think that's not going to be good for our sport. But I think just letting it go has the potential to ruin the sport, to really mess things up. So what's your thought on that idea?
I think you're right there. I'm the same way. I don't have all the answers either, but it's really important to know the history of our sport, and I'm adamant about that. That's why I'm on the board of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. And again, there's a lot of young kids coming up that need to know and understand who Ray Scott was and how we got started where we're at. Fast forward to today, unregulated or untouched, it's already happening. So the main income source for professional fishing is the broadcast rights, the fees, the live stream, television, whatever you want to call it. And the fan base is already making that decision for the leagues, and that they don't want to watch just forward-facing sonar, right? Its viewership is proving that. So just like NASCAR or the NFL or anybody else, if you don't have an audience, you don't have a fan base, you don't have viewers to watch your television, you're going to have to change. And I think I'm a huge NASCAR fan. You're right there in the heart of it. You grew up around it. They have done a really good job in the last handful of years of changing their formats, their rules package, the car, all of the tracks, the schedule, what they're doing to make it more fan friendly. I mean, in every aspect, to give fans more access to the drivers, because NASCAR used to be 200,000 people would show up to a race at Indy. And it's not like that. The stands aren't full anymore. Their television ratings were down. So they have done a lot of things to bring the fans back. And fishing is going to have to be the same way, whether you like it or not. The fans and the industry has to be successful, right? It's got to be good. Otherwise, there's not going to be the money for the purses or to be able to do it. Nobody wants to go out and compete for their own entry fees. So it's too expensive to do. You can't do that. So we have to find that happy medium with technology and create a product that the people want to see. I mean, that's the whole reason that Major League Fishing was started in the beginning, is to try to create a new product that was, interesting and different for more than just our core tournament angler fan base to want to watch. And it did. I mean, it accomplished that. It was fun to watch. A lot of wives, a lot of people that aren't necessarily ever thinking about tournament fishing enjoyed watching it. And now, the sport is really changed. It's really changed since we started live streaming bass fishing. It makes it a lot easier to learn. And I think it's been great. The greatest improvement in our coverage is, you can watch exactly how, an angler fishes a bait, turns the handle on his reel, and it's neat to see forward facing sonar and to see the bait and how the fish are interacting. But when it's one dimensional, it's not good overall for the whole product. So I think you'll see some changes and some things in the format. It's up to the leagues to do this, to make the product what our fan base is going to be interested in seeing. Because if we have less fans or our fans are dwindling, that's not going to be very bright for the future of tournament fishing as a whole. And it's already from a recruitment standpoint at the high school and college level, just the cost to enter, for the boat. And then if you got to have, 3 graphs and 5 forward facing sonar transducers and things like that, the cost of the barrier to enter is not conducive to get more people involved in our sport. We've got this huge boost from COVID with people going to the outdoors and going to fishing. And, we need to keep, these people engaged as much as we can as an industry. But tournament fishing is, that's on the forefront of that. I mean, that's the marquee piece that people watch. And, this is forward-facing sonar as part of it. I think, a little bit of some of what's going on this season, especially, it's forward-facing sonar. It's a little bit the economy. It's rising interest rates. Boat sales are tapering off from what they were the last few years and all that. And it raises a lot of concerns for a lot of the endemic companies and, anglers and sponsorships and things like that. So we have to have a product that's, fun to watch, and people watch to learn as well. The unique thing about fishing compared to a lot of other sports is it is a participation sport. There's, millions and millions of anglers in this country that love to bass fish, and they want to watch, the Bassmasters live or Major League Fishing, live stream to become a better angler themselves. They want to see how, these guys break down Lake Murray or Champlain or whatever it is. And, the best way to fish a frog or even a drop shot or pinging a minnow, whatever it is. I mean, everybody wants to learn that to some degree, but if it's only one thing, if it's only, casting at a fish that you can physically see, and it's one dimensional like that, it's not going to be very healthy for the future of the sport. So I think most of the anglers see that. I think the leagues are seeing that, and there's a lot of smart people working at it. So I think you're going to see a lot of changes coming going forward.
I got really fired up about high school fishing early on because I just love to see all these kids, and we are challenged today because of that handheld device, that cell phone. Kids are so attracted to that thing, and there's so many video games and interactions that they do on that cell phone. It just takes up all their time. And so the outdoors suffers a little bit because of that. So I'm really excited about high school fishing, and I'm watching from the time of my career when I started back in the mid 70s. I started going to what now is called ICAST. At that time, it was the AFTMA show, but it was the Industry Fishing Tackle Show. And they would always give a report on fishing license sales. And every single year, they declined. From the very time that I started going, fishing license sales for whatever year, let's just say 1990, fishing license sales were down from 89 and from 88 and 87, just a steady decline in sales of fishing licenses. And all of a sudden, high school fishing comes along, and those numbers start to increase, and boom, all of a sudden, There's more fishing licenses sold in 2007 than what was sold in 2006. So that is really encouraging, and that is going to be our future. So I've put a lot into that. And as we go along, I go to these high schools and I talk, and that's why I'm working with a company called Huckleberry Apparel, and we're trying to get funds for an opportunity for high school fishing teams to raise adequate amount of money to fund their projects. And it's exciting, but as I go to these teams and I go to these schools, there's a lot of discouragement because one boat captain may have all the electronic equipment that's necessary to compete, and some don't. And so it seems to me that it's even dividing all the expense that's involved is dividing from the grassroots level, and that's these high school kids. So that is another concern that I have, that you just mentioned that boat sales are down. We saw peak numbers during the COVID years, and now we're seeing a decline not only in boat sales, but in the number of participants in high school fishing. That bothers me. It bothers me that teams are falling out from lack of funds, and that's what we're really dedicated to working on first. But then after we get that problem solved, the next problem is how we're going to keep these kids from being discouraged if they don't have what it takes to compete. And it's hard. Would it not be very difficult for you, even with all your ability and your talent, it would be difficult for you to compete if all you had was a flasher, old Humminbird flasher, Super 60 or Super 30. It'd be tough. And all the mapping and all the things that are so important for us, if we didn't have that. But yet the expense that's involved is creating a problem on the grassroots level with these high school fishermen.
Yeah, there's no doubt that we've seen a big boom in it, and it's been great. And, but it's also the way that high school fishing has started and grown. It's created a lot of these other problems as well. And that's the big thing that I know the leagues are looking at is forward facing sonar and grassroots participation, for the trying to get co-anglers for a lot of these, lower tier and grassroots level or mid-level or even AAA level events. Nobody wants to sign up to be a co-angler when they're going to sit behind a guy that's just out there trolling around with a trolling motor on high, looking for fish with his forward-facing sonar, and he doesn't have anything to throw at because he's sitting out in the middle of the lake, Right. So their participation is way down from that. So they see that. And it's all coming to a head. And I think, hopefully, the heads at Bass, Chase Anderson, he's a smart guy. They know and understand their business. Same thing at Major League Fishing with Boyd Duckett and the whole team there. Kathy Fennell and the whole tournament staff. They see these things. They're looking at it. They're talking with a lot of their sponsors. And, trying to figure it out, because I would agree that technology is here to stay, and there's no way you can ban it, but we've got to find some kind of happy medium and balance. We got to, level the playing field. I mean, again, you look at NASCAR, and that's constantly what they're trying to do. They want the levelest playing field they can have, get those cars as close as they can together, power-wise and that. So you put it in the driver's hands to where you got exciting side-by-side racing. And at the end of the day, if Kyle Busch can make a move on Martin Truex Jr. in the final lap without just wrecking him and knocking him out of the way, that it's really fun to watch. And, I've watched what NASCAR's done the last few years, and I think they've done a heck of a job of really making the racing better than what it is, more competitive. There's more people that have the ability to win than ever out there in that. And that's what we need to do in fishing too, is, technology shouldn't be the end all be all. It should be, again, basic, that experienced guys understanding the ability when a front comes through and the lake floods, what to do to go flip or throw a spinner bait, to be diverse. We need that in fishing, and you see that in the ratings of these tournaments when you see a change, where you see something new, a new bait comes out, a new technique, a new lake, whatever it is, you see a boost in the overall ratings. And that's what we have to do as a sport and, with the leagues to do that. And I'm confident that they'll figure it out. There's a lot of people looking real close at it, and you don't want to make a knee-jerk decision. The worst thing we could do is ban forward-facing sonar. And then the second worst thing we could do is not do anything at all, because you see it, we see it. Everybody already knows that we're going down a bad road if nothing changes at all going forward. So we'll find a happy medium and create something where we have a level playing field, because it's so important. We got to have some continuity off from the grassroots level all the way up to the top ranks. I mean, it's no different. You got to have the same rules at the low tier level as you do at the Olympics, right? It should be the same. If you're aspiring to be a Major League Baseball player, you should, play in the parameters that's going to give you the best opportunity to get there, and under that same rule system. So that's what we need to do, is find something that works from top to bottom, and then we'll see this will pass. We've seen a lot of things. Remember when the Alabama rig came out?
Oh yeah,
it's like, my God, it's going to. It got banned from a lot of the circuits and things right away, and it's a really effective tool, but it hasn't ended the sport.
No, it hasn't. And I like your viewpoint. I always dominate, and I never let my co-host have a breath of air or ask a question. So, Sarah Beth, do you have a question as we're wrapping up? We're out of time, by the way. So.
No questions. I think y'all majorly hit on everything. I agree with Kevin. I think that there is no stopping technology, just like anything else. If there's a market for it and they have the ability to make something better or something easier, it's always going to be done. Either way, you're not going to fight it, old or young. We talked a little bit about the comments being made on forward-facing sonar and why it's such a debate. People need to put all of their hatred aside. I think there's just some deep-rooted resentment against younger generation and technology in general that just needs to go away, and we just need to come together and figure it out. I mean, I agree. It shouldn't be banned. It shouldn't be its own separate thing, but I think it just needs to be regulated.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I've always looked at my job as a brand ambassador, as an ambassador for the sport, as a teacher, as somebody that, people might look up to learn something, learn a new technique or a new bait or a new way to fish. It's my job to have people have a better day on the water. I fish for a living. I made a living doing that, and I feel super blessed and honored to do that. It's my responsibility to try to help people have a better time. I mean, most people don't get a chance to compete in, a national level tournament, but if they get a chance to go out for 6 hours on a Saturday morning, I want them to have the best 6 hours they can have, and take their grandson or their dad or their sister or brother or best friend or whatever out there and catch fish and have a better time to learn. So that's what I try to do, is teach people to have a better experience. I'm not, obviously I work for a lot of brands and we're, in business to sell products, and I get that all the time. But at the end of the day, if I can help somebody fish a jerkbait a little bit better, or, learn how to tie a better, more reliable knot from braid to fluorocarbon, or understand what the bluegill spawn has to do in a bass's day-to-day life, people are going to have a better time out there. And at the end of the day, that's why we all do this. We love this. I love fishing. You love fishing. We want to see it prosper in the future. And the only way to do that is to make sure that we're going about it in a way that is important for conservation going forward. They're not making more lakes. We got to take care of the ones that we've got. We've got to protect the resource. and we've got to be respectful to each other in it. And I don't like to see the controversy or anything like that, but I feel really confident about the future. I mean, this is just forward-facing sonar is just another bump in the road.
Yep, I agree, and I love your philosophy, and I'm excited about your new TV show. I'm going to be one of your biggest fans. I can't wait to watch it, and I know you're going to make that Saturday morning event for other people that are going fishing more knowledgeable. They'll catch more fish because you're going to teach us some new methods and new techniques. Tell me again the name of your show, when it's going to start airing, and where it's going to air.
It's called the Vandam Experience, and it's going to air on the Outdoor Channel starting the very first, beginning first quarter in January of 2025. And we're really looking forward to it.
Well, we're all going to
technology is so much. Yep, go ahead.
Yep, that's good. We're all going to tune in and be watching and excited about it. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time of your busy schedule and being part of this podcast. I'm your biggest fan. I'm so proud of you, and you're a great ambassador. And I look forward. You and I are going to hook up and go fishing one day, and we'll make one of your TV shows. So that'll be exciting.
You mark that down on your calendar. We're doing it.
I'll do it. Thank you, my buddy. Tell him goodbye, Sarah Beth.
Bye. It's good to see you.
Hey, thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you so much. And hey, thank you guys for tuning in. It's been a great time. I love this guy. He's one of the greatest ambassadors we have in the sport. And what a great time we had together. And thank you for joining in. God bless you. I'll see you next time.